From Sunset Beach, Hawaii, weighing 267 pounds, the magnificent Muraco.
Why is it they call him magnificent?
The man who lifts condominiums off his chest.
Anything that's explosive, anything that's exciting, Prince of Darkness, Master of Destruction, perpetrator of violence. Get ready! I'm gonna burn this place down!
Hello and welcome to Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast, Episode 9. My name's James, and I'm going to be condensing this intro massively. So, podcast, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, dontherockmorocco.com for all your side merchandise from the man himself. And speaking of the man himself, the beach bum, Don Muraco, and he's got a bit of a sore tooth today as well. So, how are you doing, Don?
Morning, James. Yeah, a little, well, it's evening for you. But, yeah, good. Got a dentist, took a right bit on a seed. Cracked the tooth.
Do you know what they're going to have to do with it? They're going to have to put because I've got a cracked tooth as well at the moment, and they're threatening me with a crown. And I've never had any dental surgery at all, and I'm really crapping it.
Not crazy about the dentist. Actually, I haven't been. I go normally, usually, but since COVID, I had when they came out with the big restrictions over here in Hawaii. Was the last day I had a dental appointment, like a year and a half ago, and I canceled that. This is my first. Friday was my first dentist. I have to go back this morning. It was my first appointment, like a year and a half, which is quite a while for me. I usually stay up on it pretty good. Insurance,
I should have said this before, but because I already told you before, I'm really hungover because obviously England, Italy yesterday, as we're recording this on a Monday evening/morning. So I'm feeling like death. If I have to just get up and run away at any point, that is a distinct possibility. So talking is a challenge, a slight challenge.
Fast. England looked fast. I was surprised. They wilted at the end.
Yeah. It's just I don't understand the substitutions at the end. He put two guys on who haven't really played anything at all, apart from in the practice. And then they put them in the biggest pressure positions of the late penalties, and it's and one of them was a 19-year-old kid who I'm not even sure had stepped foot on the pitch for England.
I don't know the particulars, but
yeah,
just watching it I was surprised Denmark went over.
Denmark, Italy,
yeah.
No, at
Where
least
did Denmark come from?
We stuffed Denmark semi-finals.
In the semis.
Yeah. So I left
Spain. Wasn't it Spain?
No.
Italy or Spain?
Italy beat Spain in the semis.
Italy beat Spain, okay.
England beat Denmark.
All right.
Italy embarrassed us.
All right, I'm all tied up.
And then
Colin broke his leg.
Oh, yeah, Connor.
He broke his leg.
Yeah, he broke his leg. Dustin Poirier. We've already said this as well, haven't we? I watched every fight apart from the main event because I accidentally ruined the result for myself. And I'm one of the few people who still really supports Connor for all his sins. And so you're gonna have to tell me what exactly happened. Was it even in the first round or was it just domination?
Poirier just ate him up. And he when they talked later, he said he heard he was firing the like the last fight. He was just banging him with those lower calf kicks and his calf kicks. And he said he heard it crack earlier. And then they were boxing, and Poirier had him pretty much, guys with $100 million in the bank, they find it. You don't find a lot of world champions in Beverly Hills. It's just the heart is just. But he said he heard it crack earlier on the lower kicks, and then they moved around, and he went to throw that big left of his, and in snapping his hips and the fight being a true boxing punch coming from his hips and his legs, the leg just folded.
Yeah. Then
he sat on the ground and kept swearing and yelling at everybody. Did an interview, and the guy's wife's was pushing Poirier's wife's a whore. Oh, it's a hoe now. No whores anymore. They're hoes. Your wife's a hoe. She's in my DM, and oh God, he was just still fired up. He didn't want to come down yet.
So that escalated quickly, didn't it? But I'll tell you what, right? I was thinking because of the finish, there's a slight saving of face. I mean, I won't remember because I wasn't born, but like the old, if you wanted to get a new challenger over in wrestling, Bruno Sammartino would lose via blood loss, but he wouldn't lose the title. And it's almost the perfect sort of scripting to come back with a fourth big time pay-per-view.
Well, I don't think they could come back again with a top shelf fighter, but I think it leads them right into the Paul brothers, Logan Paul and the other Paul, the internet. I guess they're brothers. They said yesterday they're brothers. They have the same last name, but Paul, I think it leaves them right into. And he's going into lesser competition, somebody he can dominate and he can look good over for a couple, 2 or 3, how many every fights they can get out of it, and then work himself into another top shelf fight, after dominating, unqualified, obviously less talented individuals,
Yeah, I mean, how much money is enough, though? I mean, you can't get any personal satisfaction out of it, surely, if you're beating semi-pro
At this point,
fighters.
he'd just be having fun. Having his camps and the training, and you got to be careful. He's not going to have too much fun, and have one of these jabronis knock him out. But that would kill all those plans right there. And but you got to take care of business.
Yeah, indeed. Right, I'm going to give you a few news stories at the moment, and also a correction from a podcast a couple of weeks ago that we did. And one of them is Del Wilkes, the Patriot. I don't know if you met him. I don't know if you came across him, because he was working quite late, wasn't he? I don't know if you saw him in the AWA, if you made a stop off there.
I was on that podcast, Making Waves I was doing, and he was doing Unmasking the Truth on Sunday nights. So he was on that other network, and I only met him as I meet most of the people on Interline. It was online and on camera. Tried to get a little program going with him. He's a very, very Republican Trump supporter, believer, back it, and I really don't have a political, side, but I've been a union worker for close to 30 years. So, naturally that would put me on the Democratic side of the fence, and, Joe Biden, Obama went to the same school I did here in Hawaii. So, it puts us all puts me on that side. So I tried to make a little rivalry going between he and I, try to get a little fun on the other past podcast going. He seemed like a real nice guy. He was on a high-ranked football team, a University of South Carolina Gamecocks, and the running back that they had, the guy that carried the ball. I'm talking down because I'm speaking to English.
No,
just the running back.
Americans
George
will know.
Rogers. I don't love but George Rogers, the running back, won the Heisman Trophy as the best college player of the year when and Dell was blocking for him and stuff. So he was he was a college football savant, as it were, and a good athlete. I could never met a person, but I get the impression like he was like 6'4", maybe 6'3", real solid, good shape, and from what I hear, he's a good worker. I never met him. From what I hear, he's a good worker, and he went to Japan often. And he seemed like, I said, oh man, you got to have that state. He seemed just like a state trooper, and I guess he did have when he was in AWA with Gagne. He was this. I said, boy, that would have, because he just looked like a county Mountie boy. He just came across, and he was very committed. Seemed like to be a nice guy. I didn't. They tried to make on the other thing that I had a vendetta or a feud or ratings. I was jealous of something he was doing, and that was I never even had the pleasure of shaking the man's hand and talking to him, much less anything anything else than, communication over the airwaves. So I sent my regards out to the family and to his friends, and I didn't feel I really, needed to send regards out to anybody else, that had any, other things to do with it. I just suppose that covered it. But I've taken some flack from that. As for Terry Funk's reporting that, hey, I'll own it. I'm that age. If I'm in a home, I wouldn't even know what's going on. And these are guys that were in my era, that were friends of mine. So I'm speaking like I'm speaking to friends of mine that are listening to the podcast or listening to, what I'm talking about, my recollections and my recallings. And so it's what's happening, and it's what's going on at the moment with me. And, obviously I had an unsavory bunch of friends, but Jake the Snake and Piper and Adonis and the Sheik and Bulldog. So it's a questionable amount, but they were all entertaining people. And it started with King Curtis, and I was around a lot of interesting people, entertaining, educated, education for everyone.
Did you ever? I don't know if you ever heard of a comedian called Jim Jeffries, but he's always said, even from the beginning, no funny story has ever come from somebody who doesn't drink. You've always. It's like a sober person saying, "I've got a funny story. I went home early and went to bed. Good night."
There must Seinfeld. He says no swearing, but yeah, I'd have to think on that for a minute to dispute it. It seems like it could. It seems like it could be true. And things always seem funnier when you got a little bit of a load on.
I was wondering, actually, because I sort of teed you up with the. Well, actually, you mentioned Terry Funk, but I was going to ask you about that, and I felt really guilty, actually, because it hadn't occurred to me, I don't know, hadn't really occurred to me, because I actually thought he was in a home beforehand, because I knew he was struggling and everything, physically, and I know Vicky died a couple of years before, so sorry everyone, I didn't realise. I didn't realize, but ended up making the lead story of Wrestling Observer newsletter that week as well. So,
I was talking to Scott Casey. I communicate Cowboy Scott Casey. I was with him in Dallas, Florida, and he was in WWF for a while. And I still talk to him via messenger stuff. And he just told me, "Oh, did you hear that?" And he was driving 600 miles from Arkansas down to Amarillo. And I said, "Oh, boy, that's a long way to go with blood clots in your legs, So evidently it was, because he got back and I guess they broke out in the blisters with him sitting in the car all that time. So I don't know.
But
it's getting old.
Yeah, it's not as bad as maybe Scott Casey sort of made out. Apparently, according to Dave Meltzer and Tommy Dreamer, his symptoms are relatively mild at the moment, and for the most part, he's still same old Terry Funk. So, that's good.
It probably depends. Terry depends who he's talking to. He's always working anyway.
Crazy like a fox.
These knees, I don't know. I can be more than my knees here. And you look at him, he's doing back flips off the walls and stuff,
And I'll tell you what, I'll bring up one more thing, which is actually a correction from a couple of weeks ago, because I asked you if you'd ever worked with Stan Hansen or against Stan Hansen. So I did a bit of looking up, and you tagged with him a couple of times in All Japan, but you actually faced him once, and I've got the clip for you. So this is a brand new thing.
Yeah, I saw that earlier, yeah.
So I've got the thing here. Sorry, I'm doing a screen share, so hang on 1 sec. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
There we go. I'm going to play a few seconds. I might just calm it down. And we're in ECW. And it's you and... I don't even know. I think it must be you and Shane Douglas versus Tito Santana and Stan Hansen. And I'm sort of teeing you up here because this is the end of the match, and something you're not quite expecting to happen happens. So for the audio listeners, Tito's hit a suplex, and there's going to be a double hop tag to Don and Stan Hansen.
Okay, I don't remember this one.
You do the running commentary then.
Tag in, come from Rockford, begging out. Well, these guys were baby. Oh, the rope.
So you told me, I'll leave that one there. You told me that you don't remember ever taking the lariat, and that's why you were about to take it, and then the rope collapsed, and then the ring exploded. And
I never took it.
No, you never took it.
Oh, saved by the rope. Nah, Stan was a hell. Stan was a hell of a worker. Obviously I was a baby face there. I mean, I was a heel and he was a baby face, so it allowed me to to beg a little bit. Otherwise, like it'd be like a Japan match with him and Andre would just have to go after each other all the time. So I was lucky in that. Not lucky, but made it easier in that aspect.
Hmm. And you definitely didn't take.
I don't remember that match. So many things I don't remember. Doing interviews with Oprah and hitting on the nurse with Fuji Medical. Things just went so fast in those days.
And now you've got another one that is fate interjected and stopped you from taking the lariat that you really probably weren't looking forward to taking in the first place.
Yeah, no, I didn't care. Whatever. He was, as long as he didn't knock your teeth out or something. And he didn't. I guess probably some guys he did that he wanted and did it on purpose, but he was safe. He was, except for Bruno dropped on his head, but I don't know. I never saw that. So
no, that was like a suplex or something, wasn't it? Or was it like a body slam and he didn't go over?
Something like that. Yeah.
Right, okay, then I'll tell you what, we're going to get to the main event of the show, also known as the lion's share of the show, and we're going to be doing it on Bret Hart / the Hart Foundation. So I've got a ton of questions to ask about Bret, and you're the man to ask, or one of the men to ask about Bret, because you spent some time with him in WWF. But my first question is, Hart family in general, who was the first Hart family member that you met? Because I know Dean used to go to Hawaii in the late 70s, and maybe Owen and Bruce as well.
Just met him. First one I got to know was Bret. He came in 81 or 82, and he was wrestling maybe 83.
I think Bret was 84 in WWF.
Didn't start till 84?
Yep, I think so, yeah. Same with Jim and Dynamite and Davey.
I thought Bret was around for a while as a single. I wrestled a couple times and he was a baby face when he first came in. And he would, he was quiet, real quiet, as he is now. But what was the original?
The original question was, who was the first Hart brother that you met?
Bret.
Yeah.
Bret that I got to know. The other ones, maybe a handshake or a hello. There with Leah Via or when I think it wasn't until after I went back out on the road and left Hawaii that the Harts started coming in here and helping Leah. She was calling after Peter passed and I was gone and she was alone. She was getting help from Stu and some other guys, Vince and some other guys would help her.
The next question I was going to ask was obviously first meeting Bret Hart, which you've answered. The next one is first meeting Jim Neidhart, because he had a different career trajectory to the other Harts, of course.
Yeah, he came in. He was the big red-headed stud there. He's one of Stu's boys. He married Ellie. Very nice lady. Good. And I guess he just fit right in there. Neidhart was nothing short of classic with his his goatee, and he was isn't there anywhere in this town I could find a civilized Bloody Mary? He was a classic.
Was he always like a bundle of energy, just like in the back as well?
Jim?
Yeah.
He was serious. I don't know if he was bundle of energy, not the dynamite style or something. But he was, it was people were pretty gregarious. Piper and guys talking, playing cards. Got a couple guys playing ribs and stuff. And there's always usually something going on. Conversation. I mean, we're on the road all the time, and we're in proximity to one another. So, I got a pretty good idea of what was going on in your life, short term, short, shallow water, not deep understanding maybe what's happening, but day to day happening, worked out today where this place in Syracuse, did you catch, the food at that place? Or, we always had, before and after the merger, the before international and then after international, there were Arnold Scolin's 5-star restaurants all over the Northeast. They were just fabulous. Oh God.
Man, what was Jim Neidhart's favorite meals? I just want to, for whatever reason, I just want to know that.
I was a meat eater. He was a meat eater. He was a prowler though. He didn't sleep. Bret used to say, I guess they stayed together a lot. Bret used to say that Jim was afraid of the dark because he'd be up, they checked him, then that would be it. That was Jim's day would start. And then in the gym and stuff, he wasn't a gym rat, be down there all day. He may show up with a group, that's, beyond on it just to get out of the hotel or something, but he wasn't. He was strong as an ox. He was a big bull of a man.
And to round out the Hart Foundation, I've got to ask you, Jimmy Hart. And I mentioned Bundle of Energy before, but Jimmy Hart. What are your memories of Jimmy?
He had a little bit of everything going on. He had. We started, a heel, the heel manager, and going around with the heels. Then Vince got into the music, the music productions and the music, the slammies and different things and the albums and stuff like that. And he was, essential in a lot of those things. He wrote a lot of the music and accompanied a lot of the songs. He was bundle of energy. That's and then later he. After I was gone, when I was there, he was still pretty much a heel. But later he was Hulk. He was like a personal emissary for Hulk. He would you'd handle this deal or that, or talk to this promoter for him. Or he's a smart guy. He's not, and he knows. He could get along with he got along with everybody. He was, you back him up, but he would, you press on him, he could back off, but then he would come back and he would have all the meat, all the facts, and all the gist of the matter. So it would be hard to run him off anything.
Do you remember the Gentrys from the 60s? Because they didn't have any hits here, I don't think. But
yeah, he was a member of them. Yeah.
The Bay City Rollers covered "Keep on Dancing" in the 70s and had a hit.
But dancing, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, was that like a massive hit at the time, or?
It was not bad. It was on the. I remember it was on the radio when I was a kid. Whether whether it was Emmy, it's not Emmy. What is it?
Grammy?
Anyway, Grammy.
Grammy, yeah.
Whether Grammy Award winner, I don't think, but there was and they toured. And I would imagine he was probably took a managerial position or learned a lot doing the music, and going around the country, booking his band and stuff like that, and how to get along. He was smooth. He could get along with people, just talk. intelligently, conversation simply. It would never come at you too big, and or never come at you too small either. Just factual. He's a cool, sharp dude.
Yeah. You mentioned before that he was sort of like an emissary for Hulk Hogan after you left. Were they ever close, like while you were there? I mean, obviously one's the good guy and one's the bad guy, so maybe they didn't get to hang out too much. And also, did he act like more than just an on-screen manager for Honky Tonk Man or anyone else he was managing at the time?
I don't think so. He was pretty much into what your day's going to be like, or maybe what's going on with the program. But Honky Tonk, I'm sure, probably had a handle on everything he was doing. So Jimmy would just add in wherever he could, I'm sure. With everybody else, I doubt if he was, if he did a lot of micromanaging into people's lives and stuff. But Hulk must have realized it after a while, doing all his Hollywood gigs and his, as an important business and stuff he was into, that a guy like Jimmy, it'd be, more than beneficial to have in your corner, so probably the price was right and put Jimmy to work.
Was Jimmy as obsessed with his hair in his younger days as he was maybe in his later years when there wasn't quite as much?
I don't know. I don't know if he was obsessed with his hair. It was always neat, always styled, and of course back in the everybody was young in those days. Everybody still had hair. It wasn't all white.
I've said this before, but everyone is saying like how jealous they are of your hairline. So someone said that is a juvenile hairline if I've ever seen one.
It'll be buzzed. It'll be buzzed before next show.
Oh, you should have it like braided or something. Just celebrate it, man.
Braid under my arm.
Right then, I'll move off Jimmy Hart and I will ask you this. Bret originally was apparently going to be given a gimmick of a cowboy and ride down the ring on a horse every night. Did he ever mention this to you at the time? And do you remember?
Never heard of it till I read about it this morning. Never.
Do you remember?
And a different horse every night? That would have been incredible.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, logistically that would have been ridiculous. But do you remember any other characters that you heard of that never quite made it to air, but like really odd ones that you thought, oh, and then they ixnayed it at the last minute?
Well, if there was a bad character that carried through that was Vince's idea, it was going to be a success anyway. So that didn't, there were no bad ideas that came from the office. Whether the people bought it or not, they were going places. I guess a couple of guys, Terry Taylor. I remember he was coming in as I was going out. I heard that he wasn't done right by Red Rooster or
Red
something
Rooster.
like that. Yeah, so he was his gimmick didn't work too well. But I guess he ended up working in the office, as far as I know. And gosh, I don't know. Most of the things came after. It didn't get into. It was a little more, old time wrestling up until a point before till the Ultimate Warrior. Some of those guys came in, that were just characters, Iron Man.
You mentioned the Red Rooster. I'll ask you this one. What is the worst wrestling character of all time?
Mummy? That old Mummy?
That's been done so many times as well, hasn't it?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what he does. The guy does, he can choke you. That's about it. He chokes you, and then I suppose you can pound on him all day, but you're not going to hurt him. I just don't understand that. It's like, so it's coming dressed like Frankenstein. The way you can beat him is you shut off his bolts in his neck or something. It's coming, believe me.
Oh, we've had the Invisible Man. We've had everything. I can't believe we haven't had a Frankenstein. Well, Sid Vicious. He was about Frankenstein as it gets.
Some guys move like Frankenstein.
Sid Vicious.
I only met Sid. I can't. I met him once to shake hands. He came through here. Well, and here. I think I met him in New York once. It was.
I'm going to give you this one then. So in Bret's book, he describes, and you're in this story as well. So a room with the in crowd. Bret knocks on the door. I think he might be looking for Jim Neidhart, and it's you, Jim, Sheik, Roddy, Adrian, maybe one or two other people, and you just having and partying it up as only mid-80s WWF wrestlers can. But Bret was worried that he wasn't really being accepted as the in crowd because he was a promoter's son. Was anyone really wary about that, sort of like letting him into the inner sanctum, as it were, of like the clique, the original clique?
No, less than any promoter's son. Although he was more from the Hart family. It was more Stu Hart's son, and Calgary was a territory that only God would want. I was with King Curtis and Mark Loon and Bearcat Wright. We're sitting there joking one day. I said they're talking, and then the topic of Stu and stuff came up, and I said, "Oh my God," and it was after I did that the Davy Boy, the title with Davy and stuff. I don't know if Bearcat was there, but I know Curtis and Loon were there. But we were talking, and I said, "Oh God, yeah, Calgary with Stu, and Curtis, Stu's a hardy old son of a gun." I said, "Yeah, Calgary." I said, "Who the hell would want to live up there?" And before I could finish, I looked at both of them, and they tried to, Curtis, Mark, and Bearcat, and tried to steal the territory from Stu. Mark was notorious for that. He would go on, Curtis, and the boys would love Curtis, and Mark would handle the business and everything else, and Bearcat was flying single engines all over the place, and so the Bearcat but Stu was too hardcore. It was a big fiasco on their part. I just looked at it, but no, Bret, more than being a promoter's son, he was a Hart, and all the Harts. I remember the other. I think it was Bruce. Is that Bruce's one?
Bruce's
one. I was in Japan with.
Oh, it's a good question. Early 80s.
Yeah.
I think there was Bruce, Keith, and Bret went in the early 80s.
Well, it wasn't Keith.
Yeah, it'll be Bruce then.
It doesn't be Bruce then. So I remember we're leaving early in the morning, so we're up at 7 or 8 or something to make the bus because we had a long trip. And they'd made breakfast for us, 2 eggs and some kind of cold bacon. And it probably made it about 5 o'clock. And the eggs were ice cold. I mean, your dog wouldn't eat these things. And the whole meal was nobody could eat. And Bruce, he just sat down and they talk about on the thing how everybody cleaned their plate and everybody ate. He just went through the meal like it was hot off the grill. just finished the plate whether he liked it or not. Not too he ate the whole damn thing. So they were more Harts than they were. Greg Gagne wasn't a bad guy. He was Vern's son, and I knew him early, as he got on, but he wasn't. I didn't find him too bad. Mike Graham, I got along with Mike Graham. Mike Graham, Eddie Graham's son, hard, following in that thing, and kid. But they're both of them were able to carry the flag, of the family, and so Bret was, and as he came along, as he grew, I worked with him as a baby face. He was a baby face, starting, and he was really at first. I said, "Fire!" I said, "Come on, me, beat the hell out of me. Go, don't just, And he was, I guess, he was more the Dynamite style and the suplexes and everything else. And when we finally broke through and had a couple good matches. We didn't work much together, but he was, preliminary baby face. And I was trying to get him to kick the hell out of me, but it would only go so far at that time, instead of, taking any liberties. Or so maybe it was respect for the business, respect coming from, coming from his family and stuff. But no, he wasn't a case of being a promoter's son. He was different because he was a Hart, and his dad Stu, and the whole legacy of that. But he was a promoter's son too, so it probably hung in his head.
I'll throw three things out. I don't think it was Smith Hart, but it might have been Smith Hart, the eldest one, who was the egg eater. But I don't know about that. I'm just throwing a name out. 2. I imagine George Goulas wouldn't have been invited into the hotel room with Adrian manning the people. And 3,
never met the gentleman.
And 3, you've got to tell me the story about how Mark Lewin tried to take over Calgary. I've never heard of it before.
I don't know how exactly how. I just know that they did. They would go through and I would imagine Mark would find some backers or guys, because he was the business talker. He was the and Curtis was a brilliant man himself, a Cal Berkeley grad. So but they worked. It's a good cop, bad cop. Where Curtis was the good cop, he was the big, ferocious, ugly beast of a heel, and all the boys, they kept the territory. They kept all the boys happy. Smoke, drink, party, whatever it was. Curtis, made sure everybody had a connection or had and Mark would be working the office with Steve Ricard at the time in New Zealand, or I don't know, maybe Leah or Peter. I guess by that time, nobody's home. The dog's going wild upstairs, and Peter said so Mark would. How they did it with Stu, I have no idea, because, well, it wouldn't be too hard because you have Calgary, which is we are one town, and of course Stu owns Calgary. He bought land up there with the oil, and I guess they don't know how much money they have. You have Calgary, you got Regina, you got Saskatoon, few of those other towns, and they're all 400, 500, 600 miles apart. And I don't know how, so I imagine you get into each town and you could make, they're so separated that you could make contact with a promoter or a building and attempt to bring a crew in. If there was a night, maybe Stu's night was Wednesday, so I'd bring a card in on Monday or Tuesday. That was and they had guys who would come to work for them, but obviously it fell apart. They got me down to New Zealand, Curtis and Mark, and then the weekly guarantee, and down there in New Zealand and room board. It was a great time.
I am going to give you one from Bret's book again. Do you remember? Was it Poughkeepsie-based lady called Angel, who used to hang around the hotels and stuff at the time? Because I've got a quote from his book where apparently the Bulldogs decided to take this comely lass back to the hotel room for a good old-fashioned double team. And you poked your head out of a hotel room and said, "I knew you Bulldogs were tough, but I didn't know you were that tough."
Probably true. Bobby Heenan used to have some of the greatest monologues concerning Angel, right? Her name Angel?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby Heenan. Or Lou Albano's old partner Tony Altamori.
Yeah.
Down around the Connecticut, New York City area, that Tri-City connection down there. But Bobby Heenan used to do some funny stuff on her. She was around Brooklyn, White Plains, down around those New York areas. And I remember she was telling somebody said, this to I'll meet you at the Ramada or something. And I heard the story. She took off, and her car blew up. She caught on fire on the road. And I don't know what happened after that, but nobody went to the Ramada in New York City, or nobody was even headed that direction. But she was stuck on the freeway with a car that was on fire.
What does she look like? I'm trying to think. What's that song called? Is it like the Queen of 1969? Peter something or other, the singer. Sedaka. Oh, Neil Sedaka. Is it something like that?
I don't know. It's hard to remember now. Black hair. You had black hair and big jugs. It's kind of a, always outlandish, probably, lipstick all over the place, and it was quite a while ago. She was, she always had well, yeah.
Oh, something good was happening there. A good story was about to happen there.
She used to write letters to Paul Orndorff.
Oh.
And she'd want to see him in the back getting performing actions with somebody or with another guy and stuff like that. She was off the wall. She was totally nuts. Nobody
Yeah,
the Bulldogs evidently struck. Dragged a dead carcass across the parking lot.
Well, I'll move on from that before you out somebody who may have been married at the time who doesn't want to know. I'll throw this one at you then. I don't know if you ever saw this. It was it even made into a short documentary on WWE.com. Bret Hart versus Tom McGee. Do you remember the match, the tryout match that Tom McGee had?
No, I was up in Rochester. I read about it. I knew Tom McGee, I think, from Roy Shire's territory or maybe L.A. He was a big guy, maybe 6'5", 6'6", right around 300 pounds, but just chiseled, not thick like Hulk, maybe taller than Hulk, more sculpted. He'd start off the match. He'd stand on the top turnbuckle and do a backflip into the middle of the ring. And that was pretty much the beginning, middle, and end of his match. He wasn't a bad guy, he was a good guy. I knew him and talked to him. He was like a semi-celebrity around Gold's Gym in Venice and stuff like that. He was into powerlifting. He was into bodybuilding. He was a pseudo wrestler. I never saw the match with he and Bret, which is understandably that Bret could hold him down and get him into, Bret was probably was he a part of the tag team? Were they?
No, it was a singles match, just Bret versus Tom. And
no, I know, but was he in the tag team?
I don't think so. Tom was always a single.
Were he and Jim Heels already, or is he still?
I'm not sure he ever made it onto TV. Pretty much, I know he went to Stampede, and I think he may have gone to Japan at some point as well. But apparently, Tom McGee? Yeah, Tom McGee. He never had a good match after the Bret one, and he did it for years, and he could never wrap his head around wrestling.
He could work, but he was awkward. You couldn't put him in play. Hulk, as big as they are, or Stan Hansen and some of these guys, Mulligan, as big as they are, they move from spot to spot, seeming effortlessly, and they're able to, and there was no smooth flow, and there was no. He didn't really have it mentally, that to get over. And I don't think he could get it because he was pretty egotistical, pretty sold on himself. And he was a talented guy. And movie star type, movie star wannabe, could-have be, should-have be guy. He's a 6'6", 300, etched, good looking, long hair, acrobatic, but it just, and all those things, but they just never kind of meshed into one piece where where he could go in the ring and you get sympathy on him, or he could get heat on you. He'd beat the hell out of you, but he wouldn't care. He should be. So you can't see him as a heel begging off, and being afraid of somebody, and as a baby face, and his selling lacked the empathy, the believability that he could never let himself go that far to really believe that he's hurt or believe he's Bret Hart's not going to hurt. This guy's not going to hurt this guy. He's too big and too strong. So it was Bret's psychology and Bret's timing and not rushing through. I'm sure other guys could have had matches with him, but maybe they might have been in time restraints, because that territory was full of great workers. Bret was one of them, but everybody else, throw him in there with Bob Orton, throw him in there with Adonis, throw him in there with Piper's a little stylish, but Piper would have a whole production, to work around Piper's Piper, to work around his strengths and stuff. A match with Hulk, it wouldn't happen. DiBiase, somebody like that could work with him. I could work with him, and have a Fuji. Fuji was a hell of a worker before he became manager, and even as manager, he was a hell of a worker. And people, then you talk about cliques. He was a big part of that clique. You want to call it a clique. He was in Vince's office from Vince Sr. and Vince Jr. because he had the tag belts with Tanaka and everybody. He played a lot of. In fact, he was the one I gave him. I was watching the Road Warriors on Atlanta TV. I said, "Hey, food, you seen?" No. I said, people, they're ready. These guys, you can have a knockoff of these guys anywhere. And the people are just, they're just going. You can throw, make up a name. So that's where
Demolition.
Bill Eadie and Demolition came from. I said, well, I said, yeah. I said, the people are buying that all that Mad Max stuff and everything else. I said, these guys are over, and they're so over that there's spillover, that there's room for somebody else to get over using their gimmick. And it was that simple. It was just in vogue at time. And he brought it to Vince, and Vince brought it to himself, and then it was a good idea Vince had.
I'll bring you back to Tom McGee just slightly. So someone who's 6'5", enormous body. I've heard this said once before, and I can't remember who said it. Looking like that, you're either going to be in the main event, like Batista, or you're going to be in the opening match, like Rick Drayson was for how many years, if you remember that name from the West Coast.
Oh, yeah,
and there's no in between.
Yeah, I knew him well. Just too in love with their bodies, I guess, too in love with themselves to be able to be, to put yourself out there, as because when you're out there selling, you're an utter failure. You're just portraying yourself as a complete boob, So, and when you're doing that, so that I don't think as diet and scientific and everything else, those guys, maybe they just couldn't turn the corner and get that light just didn't go on in their head where they could sell and to make your opponent, you're made, you look great, you're fantastic. Let's see, let's have you, go against somebody that, that you can make that's a worthy, let's make it a worthy match out of this. Don't go in there, and try to give me 20 minutes of how good you are. I don't know.
I'll tell you what then, I will move on. In fact, I'm going to move on over several different questions. I was going to ask you about Owen Hart and stuff. We'll save that for an Ask Muraco Anything, which there is going to be one next week as well. Or, in like 30 minutes when I start asking you stuff for the next episode. But I'll save the Owen Hart stuff for another day. I will ask you, Bret Hart keeps mentioning his love of drawing cartoons. Did he ever draw a cartoon of you? And do you remember when he used to draw cartoons on the blackboard? Any memorable ones of those?
Yeah. He might have been some of me or some of the other boys, but he mostly picked on Strongbow. All his it might have been somebody had was a flavor of the month or something that he would draw a cartoon of, but usually Strongbow with the stomach and naked and the hanging out and the droop feather, and always that's the character I remember most, and Vince or whoever else happened to be it, but he would get Strongbow every time.
Did Angel feature in any of these blackboard drawings as well?
He could have been.
Okay, I'm going to give you the next one then, and it's Hart Foundation. They're together 1987, I think. It's either early 87, or late 86. They win the tag team titles, and then they form a little unit with Jimmy Hart, of course, who was already there, and Dangerous Danny Davis. I don't think that many people really talk about Danny Davis, and he was a big character for a couple of years, and he was a referee, and he was Mr. X at one point, I think, as under a mask.
Yeah.
What do you remember of Dangerous Danny?
He was a good friend of mine. He was a good guy. He was on the road with us. He was one of the full-time referees, and he figured into an angle. Maybe around 200 pounds. 210 pounds, not a small guy, but not not in wrestling shape, but he was a good guy. He was around. He was always around the boys and stuff. Of course, he had his business, the ring too, to take care of. And guys would rib him, and he was like one of the boys. He was a good guy.
They rib him? Did you say you can't say that and not give me an example?
Oh, Fuji one day left him a baggie of Sweet and Low.
Right, I see.
Oh. He went to his room and got a headache, migraine. He was cool.
Did he take it well, at least?
I guess. You mentioned it, the goddamn foods later. I was already. Oh man.
Speaking of people getting themselves into trouble, and I don't know how big a story this was in the back at the time. Maybe it was like the talk of the town. I don't know. Jim Neidhart, he got into a legal wrangle with an air stewardess at US Air because apparently she claimed Jim assaulted her on the plane.
Mm-hmm.
What do you remember of what was said and the lawsuit? Tell me everything you know about it.
Okay, I was there. I think they're coming into Cleveland, Columbus, someplace in Ohio. And Jim coming from Tampa, and actually Jim needed a couple cocktails to relax. So he had his up in the overhead container. We used to have the stacks of free drink things from the US Air. So evidently, obviously, it was on US Air. So the US Air thing. So he went and he's just pointing to the lady that tapped on her wrist that my coupons are in my bag. I got to get, and that was it. She had him arrested for assault and battery. So without anybody staying, they were waiting at the gate in Pittsburgh. They were waiting at the gate in Pittsburgh, and boom, on went the cuffs. And away he went to the police station to be booked and everything else. So they did that, and then it turned out that Jim proved everything, that he didn't do anything, that he never harassed the stewardess, and she made any, and the cops were overzealous, and anyway he settled for $100-something thousand, over $100,000, I forget, 175, something like that. So he said, so being Jim Neidhart, and I don't know what his tax situations were, he carried it around in a suitcase, in a brief. He didn't put it in a bank or I wasn't there. I think I was already out, but he carried around in a briefcase up from town to town. Like, he carried it in a briefcase. And if I'm not mistaken, Vince wanted his piece of it because everybody was supposed to kick back, whatever you made. But and he didn't want to kick that because this was a lawsuit,
Well, it was a loan. The government. It was a loan. Vince McMahon actually loaned him the legal fees.
Was it what? Was it?
Yeah.
I don't know the intricacies of that, but I know that Vince wanted money out of the thing, out of the settlement. So maybe it was from a loan. But anyway, he carried that money around with him for I don't know how long, and that's pretty much the money thing.
Is that not an issue? I don't know American law very well, obviously, but isn't that an issue carrying that much money over state lines?
Not state lines, but federal. Why anybody would do that is beyond me. Misplaced. You handcuff it to yourself. Put your arm out.
Do you know who, or if anyone that Jim was traveling with, like who backed him up in court? Do you know who was like party to the incident?
I think they were the Hart Foundation at the time. They were a tag team, and Bret was. I don't know if Bret made it to the arena to tell what's happening, or I don't remember. I just remember hearing that Neidhart got picked up at the airport for assaulting the flight attendant. And then later on, I was still there for a good part of it. And then just later on that he had, as it took a while, as months went on, that he'd settled and had the money. And I guess by the time he had the money, I was pretty much on the way out. That's when he was carrying the money around from town to town.
So
allegedly.
So in 1988, Bret is a fully fledged single wrestler, and the reason being he's turned into a good guy is because apparently he's getting more fan mail than anybody else, including Hulk Hogan. But my question to you is, how much fan mail did you get? Like, I don't know what metric you want to use, like sacks full every month. Did you reply to anybody, and did you get some really weird things sent to you over the years?
No, we didn't get any fan mail. We were on the road. They might have went to the office or something. I don't know if they ever distributed or anything. They were anything important enough. I don't remember getting any fan mail. Maybe the occasional something at an arena or something. I had some friends, some people I met that I did an appearance for it at a skate rink, and he was in Barb Artiste, and they made us a nice doll and a nice letter. We became, friends after a while, and to this day. But they were, it was an intelligent, exchange. It wasn't a fan letter. And they lived in Philadelphia. I was up in Edison, New Jersey. So it was. I still keep in contact with them.
Yeah. So no,
we never got. I know. I had no address. There were no cards. There, rarely any pictures. There were no autograph. Like they have now. There were no Comic-Con shows or autograph shows. Meet and greet with the wrestlers anywhere.
So no, poison cakes or like naked photos of women or anything trying to entice you.
No. Well, no cell phones. In the last couple of days, last week I got 2 or 3 days in a row, women, or, the online solicitation. I go, man, what did I do to deserve this?
I will give you the next one then. Solo Bret Hart goes against Bad News Brown for his first feud as a good guy. Bad News Brown, you've got to have some memories of this dude. I remember Lance Storm, I think, may have said when Bad News Brown walked into the locker room, everybody just sort of sat up a little bit straighter.
I worked with him one time in Hawaii. I was going through or coming through. I don't know what I was doing there. It was when Liam, I think it was Liam, I guess, promotion, and they booked me with him. And it was a horrible match, just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I was a babyface, but he didn't seem to want, we just went and got a double DQ finish or something like that. And it wasn't, wasn't a really entertaining match. He'd come from Calgary. He'd spent a lot of time in Calgary with Bret. So evidently, I guess they were, must have spent some time down the dungeon. And I'm sure, being a judo, was he silver medalist?
I think he was a bronze medalist.
Bronze medalist, he was up there to get into the Olympics alone. But he placed to be a medalist, and I'm sure the old man wanted to, can you like to come down and have a talk with the boys? He was great. The old man was great. Really great. Everybody, that voice, everybody copies that. It's he talked to me as in Hawaii one time, and he was asking about Curtis and stuff, and he does, because he just loved to. I was on the phone to Hawaii, and Curtis said, I mentioned that Curtis started, I was the bull, I was the big bull doing that, the big hunter. He's a good time was up here with Mark Lewin, and he go out, he talked an hour on the phone. This guy was, he was a cool old guy, man.
Did he have cool. Like no animosity, despite the fact he tried to steal the territory off him that one time?
Evidently not. Yeah, and you want to pretty much, you want to come to Calgary and take help yourself. You can stand living in this frozen outback, a year in and year out, and that's a place out there. That's for. Hawaii is the extreme, and that's the other. I guess you could live in the North Pole or something if you really wanted to go far out. But, beautiful at Banff up in there, and Banff and stuff outside of Calgary. What some of those British Columbia, some of the scenery there is just spectacular.
Before we get off bad news, there's a couple of very, very well-known confrontations, shall we say, involving bad news. One's with the Cuban assassin, who I think he was going to have a tryout in the WWF, and also one was with Andre the Giant on a bus. Do you remember hearing or even seeing either of those happen?
Just hearing little stories. Cuban assassin, didn't that turn into some type of stabbing or something?
I think. I don't know what happened. I think he either chased him out the arena with something, but I think their wives had a falling out, and then they were best friends and then were mortal enemies, like, overnight.
Oh, yeah. I heard something. I heard that he had some heat there, but don't know. And Andre just didn't like some guys, and some, guys wouldn't, I guess they did have a thing about Andre, too. They just... they didn't want to put him over, what are you going to do? He's a giant. He's a giant. You can't. You're not going to be a giant. And if you get some kind of thing, I don't know what happened with him and Andre. No, I wouldn't. Japan, you're in close quarters, and you can get short-tempered at times, or just frustrated with the whole situation. No English, no food, no this. A lot of food, but you have to like
cold eggs.
Yeah, well, that was that one, just one instance.
I'd be bad-tempered if I had nothing but cold eggs for like a 3-week tour or whatever. I'll tell you what, right, so we're pretty much, end of 88, you leave WWF, so I'm going to ask you a couple of more general questions about Bret, and we'll sort of close this podcast out. But Survivor Series 1997, because you can never talk about Bret without talking about the Montreal Screwjob. So, in the whole instance, who do you sympathise with the most and least? Vince McMahon, Bret, Shawn, and if you were in the same position and you're asked to lose the championship to somebody you weren't keen on, what would you do?
Well, if it was me, it was not a hard choice. I'd drop it and everything else. Now, to go into that thing, if you look at it on the surface, it's 100% against Bret, because back in those days, that's what you did. When you left the territory, you dropped the belt to the next guy, and to leave the territory in good shape, and that was it. And being from whether you're in Canada or Hoboken, New Jersey, it did really make a difference. From what I heard, there was a contract that was reneged on, and the financial difference was huge from his loss. So you don't know what, it's in business. It was in business wise, it was wrong. What happened personally, you just don't know. You have to be on the inside, even deeper inside than Jimmy Hart, to know what was going on with Bret and Junior at the time. Not dropping the belt. Sean was hot too. I was watching. My son was watching, and he loved the sexy boy thing. And and Sean, it was right. It was just right. Sean, Sean was a hell of a worker, and the timing was right for him to take over the lead spot, I thought. But then again, like you say, the business was such, and that was like one of the 10 cardinal sins, mortal, 10 commandments of switching the job and putting guys over on your way out of the territory. But then, I don't know what kind of understanding that they had, or what the reneging on the financial situation was, and everything, or if there was agreement about dropping the title in Canada, and it seems pretty hinky, everything, that it worked out that way. But and they even talk to this day sometimes that it was a work. So I don't know. It could, in the true sense of the word, yeah, it was wrong, and Bret was wrong. But if you know more inside, if you have more of an inside view and more facts, you could go the other way. So as far as business is concerned, and up until that point in history, yes, he should have dropped the belt, should have put Sean over in the middle, or somewhere proximity, worked out a finish. But like I said, I don't know what was, I was removed 10 years by then, so I don't know what was spoken and what was going down at the time.
Right, I'll ask you two more questions, then we'll shut down the podcast. So he brought up Shawn Michaels. He came in for one match in, I believe, 1987, and then he and Marty Jannetty got fired. Do you remember hearing why they got fired? And also, do you have any memories of Marty and Shawn in the few months you shared together in the WWF in '88?
I don't remember him getting fired. I guess it was in Buffalo TV.
I should have done more research on that.
Yeah, I think I read where they were up or saw Marty Jannetty, that they were up and somebody, I think it was Jesse Jack Funk. I thought you guys knew how to party or something, and they ended up tearing up some bar, nightclub. Luckily I wasn't around there. I had a family that lived in Niagara Falls, so I usually run up there to eat Italian food.
And I'll give you the last question. Well, it's not really a question. I suppose it's, do you have any Bret and Jim Neidhart stories to bring up that I've sort of like not prompted, that are funny or stick out in your mind?
Oh, I looked at the question. I thought of something earlier, and then I kind of blanked by me. But just when Ultimate Warrior fixed Neidhart's neck, good God, Jim had a stiff neck. And Warrior was supposed to be, had gone to chiropractic school or somewhere in North Dakota or something at a fair. And And they're giving him a big show at this state fair up in North Dakota. Oh, my neck's killing me. And Jim Hellwig, Warrior, can you put it in? So he got boom. If it was a normal person's neck, he would have killed him. He would have broken his neck. But Neidhart, he's like a rhinoceros. And then you heard this big snap. A big crack in there, and he got it. It must have been way, way deep. But the way he, boom, Arnold Schwarzenegger does it when he kills people in movies.
Yeah, on Predator.
The Rock does it in movies. I mean, he whipped his head that hard and that fast. And everybody, if you're thinking about trying to ask him for an adjustment, before you saw that, you didn't. That's all right. Forget, I'll live without it. It would break my neck. Or I'd be resisting the whole time. Good God.
Who? I've got a name in mind, but who were the other backstage locker room chiropractors?
Oh God.
I've heard Harley Race.
Yeah, Harley. Harley would adjust you. Harley had all those natural strength things, for your back. And Harley was an old timer. He'd been around. Harley started when he was about 15, 16, working. And he was notorious for his driving. Oh my God. Said 80, 85, 90 miles an hour. As soon as he hit right out of the airport. Unreal.
Who was the worst driver then, Ultimate Warrior or Harley Race?
Oh, Warrior. Harley was fast. Harley was ridiculous, and fast, everything else. Warrior was just out of his mind. Slam. We're coming out of the gym, that Tallahassee day. I went got a ride with the gym to there's a Gold's or something there from the hotel. And we're pulling out of the parking lot. He just slams his foot on the gas. And, the rubber starts, there's some guy out and off in the distance, walking through the mall parking lot. He heard that. He just started running. Somebody must have been out to get him or something. Oh, God.
Maybe he had his own theme song playing on the radio. That would have G'd him up.
Yeah, sure, man.
Right, I'll tell you what then, I am going to close down the podcast for today. So that was Bret Hart. I'm going to look at the right camera. So that was Bret Hart. That was episode 9. Thank you so much for listening. I'm going to give you all the stuff again. So Don Muraco's Magnificent Podcast. Derivatives of that is on YouTube, the podcast itself, audio podcast, iTunes. We're not on Facebook. We are on Instagram. Don's daughter Keely does that. That's just Don Muraco. And where else? And of course, DonTheRockMorocco.com for signed merchandise and stuff like that. But for now, thank you very much for listening. I'm James for Don. We'll see you again next week.
Aloha.